6 best practices have to do with ways you can get better at that. The way you think, using pull, building high-quality social networks that move out into the organization rather than being a tight little group. And using the 3 degrees of separation to move it out. This is why we call it change from the inside out. It's not just inside ourselves, it's within an organization moving out in all directions. They invest in social capital. And social capital is an investment in trust and well-being that comes back to greet you in the future. It is capital, just like investment in a bank, of good feelings toward each other, good behaviors toward each other, knowing that that person is all right. They engage in inspired conversations, of course, and create engagement processes that flow. Those are the practices, and we're going to pick them up and deepen them more in the future. 5 attributes make the right things matter most. To me, that's one of the most critical ones, and I mentioned that when we were talking about money. The wrong things are anything that is intrinsically motivated. So position, power, influence that I started out with, the wrong things. They might be nice to have, but if they matter most, they take us the wrong direction. There are so many things. Our status, whether other people like us or not, whether we're respected, all of those things aren't what matters most. What matters most is those 3 intrinsic motivators within ourselves. And what matters most for an organization is its mission. It's the people that it serves and the people that make it serve that way. That's what matters most. And when money becomes the thing that matters most for an organization, it has the same influence as it does on individuals. First thing people do when they look at something that's going to be initiated is, well, how much is that going to cost? Wrong things. That's the wrong question. The question is, what will I do for this organization? Will it engage people? Will it make our services better? Ultimately, if you're a hospital, will it make the flow of patient experience better? That's what matters most. So that's the first one. And a natural leader asks that question every day. Am I making the right things matter most? The second attribute is making authentic connections without boundaries. And we talked about that before. The word boundaries is a really important one. I think there was a very smart guy some years ago who talked about no barriers, break down barriers. He should be somebody that started a process improvement cycle. Maybe he could have helped the Japanese because they didn't seem to pay much attention to it at first. But Ed Demick went over there and he taught them a lot of things. And he talked about boundaries, and he saw that as the enemy of good work within an organization. Not silos, not levels, no boundaries. Natural leadership flows in all directions, right through those boundaries. A nurse, one time when we were running a natural leadership experience, and we asked, what's the most important thing you learned today at the end of the session? And this was a session that had multiple levels of administrative people in it, as well as not only nurses, but physicians and people who were right there in the gemba doing the work day to day. She said, the most important thing I learned today is we're all on the same level. We're all on the same level. Because this is the work we're doing. And there they were helping each other with that work. And it doesn't matter whether you're a CEO or the person changing bedpans. Natural leadership, that journey is everyone on the same level. The third one is happy, open-hearted attitudes. And it's interesting. Joseph Campbell, during his later years, gave many, many speeches to college students. And his biggest advice for them was, follow your bliss. And when I heard that word bliss, I thought, man, is that a bunch of frou-frou? Until I cut back into it to a deeper level. And what he was really telling people is, there's a sense of good feeling of well-being that you get when you're on your own track, on the right track, and you'll know whether you're on it or not, depending on how you feel. Now we're going to review some studies of that so-called bliss, that happiness, in just a moment. The other two are triggering best instincts and trust emergence, so we're going to visit that one in a moment too. But what we're talking about here is transformation. And not the fairy tale transformation that you see up there, where a frog becomes a prince. Natural leadership transforms and aligns the workplace culture to ensure success of lean process improvement. That's what it does. And it is true transformation. And I wanted to tell you, I want to quickly share some research has been done on this. That mood, that happy mood, that positive mood is not just about pleasure. Nothing wrong with pleasure. But this is a deeper kind of positivity. And this research shows that that mood widens the scope of attention that we're able to give in any moment. And one of the discoveries they've had with physicians, for example, when they're in that kind of a positive mood, is they see a wider bandwidth of information. And it helps to make sure that they aren't just seeing this patient with a circumscribed set of issues that they can very quickly diagnose. But they see the other subtle things that are going on that might make for a very different diagnosis. It increases the degree to which people perform discretionary acts for the benefit of an organization. And of course, that's what engagement is all about. They just do it. They do it because a natural leader is intrinsically motivated to be generous and to give. And there's a reward in that. I've often said to people when I'm coaching them, be selfish, give. And notice how it makes you feel. It increases intuition and creativity. Again, there's all kinds of research that shows that. That positive attitude that comes from the intrinsic motivators causes people to think through things in new ways in the work. It heightens a group's ability. Now we're talking about a group to deal with complex ideas and formulate out-of-the-box solutions. It shifts teams into great creative elaboration and exploration of ideas rather than just dead-ending ideas. It creates more behavioral variability within moment-to-moment interactions across organizational members. And look at that. It creates organizational resilience in times of threat. Think of organizations and you wonder, they're feeling times of threat. That positive mood scientifically has been shown to create more resilience, the ability to get back up and use the threat to leverage it for something more creative and more powerful and more effective. So, Holly, I'm going to invite you to join in here because we're going to talk about align, enable, and improve. And you've had a lot of experience working with that. And I've heard you and Evan talking about the way, I'm sitting in a room in which you just laid out ways to look at the KPIs and the KBIs of align, enable, and improve. So Holly, would you pick up here and talk a little bit about it? You can click forward as you wish.
Thank you, Lou. It's my pleasure to join you in this. This is really important work. And, for me, I hope to provide a practical example about how natural leadership can be used within an acute care hospital setting in order to drive that operational excellence and to get the key performance indicators that you're looking at. But more importantly, back to Mike's point at the beginning when he talked about the IEX model and the hard and the soft skills, to really to find where the success can be in the key behavioral indicators. Because just as Mike said earlier in the model, it's all of that coming together in order to really drive the operational excellence. And that was important to me. As a hospital operator, I'm looking at our regulatory and quality standards that we need to follow. I'm looking at the local improvement work that's going on within quality councils, and of course, embracing the lean transformation principles, which I like to say is putting process improvement on steroids. But that methodology really provides the discipline and the thought process to help your improvement and your ideas actually become a reality, and helps you to have that methodology to support that. But more importantly, there's the human side of it. And a lot of times if you fall short in meeting your metrics, you have to examine why, and you need to look at the culture and where your team is at in regards to their leadership behaviors and competencies. So I was really excited to learn more about natural leadership and to have an opportunity to expose our interdisciplinary leadership team to those principles so that they could do that self-examination individually, but also how do they interconnect with each other as a group. And then once again, how does that position them or not to be successful in leading the hospital? Because the patients are our main mission, and we need to make sure this is really important work. We're not working with widgets, we're working with people, and it's important to take a look at that. So for me, I was really searching for a way to pull all of those elements together into one model. So I think the work that we're talking about today, the conceptual framework, the velocity model, and the natural leadership gives us a platform to be able to really do that well and to have some intentional conversations to determine how we're doing with that. We did have an opportunity to put our leaders, as I said, through the Natural Leadership Program, and just to provide some practical stories, I really saw a transformation in how a team that was already good really took steps towards being great, and how they functioned as an interdisciplinary team, because you have to have that interconnectivity between people and systems, which we've talked about, in order to get your best results. So immediately I saw a shift in their mindset. I saw them becoming more focused in how they thought about their individual actions as people and as leaders, and how that affected and impacted the systems that they were working on. And once again, I think so after everyone has gone through natural leadership, and then you think about the velocity model, and you think about the align, enable, improve, right? First, when you think about alignment, and I'll just move forward to that slide for the purpose of doing that. Oh, there's some transitions here. Let's make those happen. There we go. So when you think about align, the practical example that I want to provide is think about your organizational mission, vision, and values. Okay? These are not just documents and words on paper. They should explain the way, not just the work that you're going to do, but the spirit and the work for which and how you're going to do it. And I think natural leadership, once again, provides that mindset so that when you think about the mission, vision, and values, it causes you to internally examine how you live and breathe that each day. So if you're successful with that, you should be able to not just say what those are, but really deeply explain how that connects your work, and for anyone that you're working with within that setting. The other thing that I've seen natural leadership do in connection with the alignment is to, as leaders are rounding and they're doing their work, it causes them to be better observers. It causes them to think more systemically about what they are observing out in their workplace, and to not only observe but ask questions in a way that really provides a deeper understanding of the work that's being done. As I've seen this unfold, I've seen the leaders learn more about their day-to-day operations and learn more about their people. And then by being better informed, then the process improvement work and all of these other things that we're doing are more successful, because we more deeply understand the root cause and what's driving people. So when we look at it with the natural leadership and just being, aware of the observer that you are and understanding yourself, all of these habits, practices, and attributes provide a deeper level of thought process about how you show up as a leader and how you drive those outcomes. With the enable, I like to think of these as the tools that help you to do your process improvement work. But looking at the natural leadership concepts here, multi-directional mutual support, in this journey. I think this goes back to the interdisciplinary team and the awareness that you need to not think in silos. You need to think across the systems that you interface with. And you've mentioned here the pull strategies. I think the important thing to learn about this journey is you need to meet people where they are in their development. You need to meet them where they are and allow this to emerge over time. And lastly, with the improve, you talked about the science, the art and science of this. Mike mentioned this as well. I definitely think there is leadership science behind this. And so how does natural leadership become that precursor so you can develop the appropriate mindset with your leaders? And then when you look at the key behavioral indicators, the principles for which you lead, that all pulls that together in the model. And you have comments here, definitely the mirroring, whatever we do as leaders, we're trying to mirror, have our staff mirror that as well. And that helps facilitate a lot of the learning as we go forward too. And I believe that goes back to you, Lou.
Okay. I want to tap on the whole idea of emergence because emergence is a concept that was developed out of the biological sciences as they watched birds flock. And they watched bees and ants. And then they watched ants working with bees. And you'll see them at their work. There they go. And notice how they're working together. Notice even when one of them finds that he's not needed or it's not needed, it tries certain areas and then says, oh, I'm going to go help someplace else. There he goes. The thing about emergence is that in human systems, there isn't any queen bee. They used to believe that the queen bee actually did all kinds of running of the hive, and they discovered that the queen bee actually, even in bee systems, simply lays eggs. There is no, the emergence that happens in those systems flows because of common values, because of intrinsic motivation, because of engagement, and there's an interconnection among them. That interconnection is a subliminal sense of awareness of what my place is in this and what I can do about it. And if you watch flocking birds, you'll see that sense of oneness that happens with that flock of birds. And every single one of them, there's no bird standing at the side with a flip chart saying, okay, now wait a minute, let's go this way or that way. They're all engaged. You don't see an ant saying, oh, well, that looks like it's pretty good, going pretty good. I think I'll just step aside here for a little bit, take a rest and check out. Or I'll do what I have to do. The engagement is 100% for every one of those emergent animal systems. Whether it's a school of fish, or a flock of geese, or a whole herd of buffalo, they're all engaged. And so emergence, my experience is that you get that intuitively. You see serendipitous things happening in an emergent system, and you wonder where'd that come from? But somebody else isn't surprised that it came from there because they're closer to whatever that serendipity was. You notice a connection among people who are similarly intrinsically motivated, moving together. A lot of what that movement, that connection, is under the surface of awareness. It was Carl Jung who talked about the field and how it connected underneath. And there's no question but which, when you start moving together, as Holly was describing, where people are really getting it, that there's another thing going on. And that other thing is a sense of connection across the system. It's a system level thing that everybody who is intrinsically motivated and engaged feels. They have a hard time seeing it, but they feel it. So, just to review, it's guided by natural leadership attributes. Its motivation is intrinsic. Its engagement is very high. And by the way, if you want to drive up engagement, this is the track to take. Improvement is continuous. It operates both above and below the level of conscious awareness. It has boundaryless connections among people. It doesn't matter whether it's a CEO or the person changing the bedpan. They're connected, and serendipity is continuous. And it operates in flow. And in another webinar, I'll talk a little bit more about what that flow is like. Because a guy by the name of Mihai Csikszentmihalyi really invented that word and did a superb amount of research in ORs, by the way. So, culture of natural leadership inspires system-wide alignment. It connects people to their own intrinsic motivators, fulfillment, improvement, authentic connection with no boundaries. It expands the 5 attributes in all directions, from the inside out, as high engagement becomes emergent throughout the system. Now take a moment, right now, and remember a time in your life, and it might have been very recent, that it was especially satisfying and fulfilling. Notice how you felt. Notice that there was a different kind of good feeling than just going out and doing something pleasurable. Notice what it caused you to do. Notice the connection you had with other people while you were doing it. That experience can be created in the workplace. The whole workplace can be operated out of that sense of satisfaction and fulfilling. That's the object of natural leadership. Thanks a million. I've enjoyed being with you.